Have you ever walked through a forest and felt an inexplicable connection to the earth beneath your feet? As if the soil, the trees, and the very air around you were whispering stories from centuries past. Imagine for a moment if those whispers could take form, if the essence of nature itself could be captured and transformed into a visual narrative that speaks directly to the heart. That is precisely what today's artist does. Creating art that is so deeply connected to the environment isn't just about technique. It is about being in tune with the world around you, listening to the silent stories that the land, the water, and the air carry. Today, we have the privilege of speaking to an artist who has mastered this delicate balance. Kuweni Dimuthu, a Sri Lankan-born, Australian-based artist, has carved a unique space for herself in the art world by blending her life's landscapes with cultural narratives that resonate on a deeply human level. Kuweni's work is much more than visually stunning art. It's an immersive experience that draws you in with its tactile qualities. She uses materials sourced directly from nature, earth pigments, handmade tools, and natural fibres to create pieces that not only capture the eye, but also invite you to feel the essence of the environment. These materials aren't just chosen for their aesthetic appeal. They are integral to her process, grounding her work into the places and stories from which they originate. Her art also serves as a powerful exploration of cultural hybridity and the experience of living between worlds. Through her creative process, Kuweni explores her own journey of identity, belonging, and regeneration, weaving together the threads of her Sri Lankan heritage with the Australian landscapes she now calls home. It's a journey that speaks to anyone who has ever felt caught between different cultures and identities. And it's a journey that has led to a body of work that is both deeply personal and resonant. In this conversation, you'll gain insights into the rituals Kuweni incorporates into her practice. Rituals that are as much about grounding and connecting as they are about creating. You will hear about the significance of the natural materials she uses and how they serve as a bridge between her heritage and the environment she inhabits. And you'll discover how her art is not just an expression, but also a form of communication, a dialogue between artist, the land, and the viewer. Whether you're an artist seeking to enrich your own practice, or simply someone who understands and values the transformative power of art, this conversation will inspire you to see the world and your own creative journey in a new light. Thank you for joining me in welcoming Kuweni Dimuthu to our Fibre Arts Take 2 studio as our 144th Friday feature artist. Kuweni, it is an absolute honor to have you here today. Thank you for joining us. Kuweni, a very, very warm welcome. It is so great to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for having me here and giving me the opportunity to talk about my art and my journey.
It's such a privilege because we've met, which is wonderful. So to be able to also interview you and see how your journey is coming along for me is quite a privilege. So thank you for taking the time, especially since I know that you're flying off to Sri Lanka tomorrow.
Yes, I
am. Kuweni, you are a Sri Lankan-born, Australian-based diasporic artist, and you've been living in Australia since 1999. For our viewers out there who may not be familiar with you or your work, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Sure. So I'm a place-based artist, which means my work comes from place. I make my own pigments and tools from place. I'm a diasporic artist, meaning the work I do also is from my experience or my cultural identity from Sri Lanka and also my life identity and experience in Australia. I'm a multidisciplinary artist. I do fibre art, I do work on paper, fabric, and also I do performance and also works on like projected works, so video projections on surface like buildings and things. So my practice is very much based or rooted in ritual drawing, a very old tradition from Sri Lanka. It's a vanishing heritage. It's got three elements of like yantra, tantra, mantra. Yantra is the symbolic drawing, and for me, my work is a contemporary extension of this old heritage.
Wonderful. And Kuweni, for those who might not know, could you talk a little bit more to what diaspora is?
Mm-hmm. So diaspora are people who are migrants who come from a different culture and who holds that culture in this new culture that's in your new country.
So it's about reconciling and making sure that you're keeping the heritage that you have grown up with, and reconciling what you have and what you're learning, I guess, finding place.
I'm learning that it's a bit of both. So I'm learning that it's holding a culture within a culture. So in my case, my culture, the lands I come from, my culture is thousands and thousands of years old. And so is the culture that's here in Australia. So the First Nations people have lived here for thousands of years. So it's about, my exploration is about how do I hold a culture within a culture respectfully.
Yeah, that's very powerful. Yeah. Kuweni, you mentioned Lorna Crane has been very instrumental in helping you unlock your visual language. And this connection between you two is so powerful that I've actually invited Lorna to join us in our conversation today. But before I invite her, could you share with us or talk to us about your relationship and how Lorna has influenced your work and your creative journey?
Yes, Lorna has been a teacher, a mentor. She's also been, like a dear friend. I think a teacher, a friend, a combination of a few things. Sometimes also like a colleague, or like we share our practices and reflect on our practices. She's been a many things to me as an artist. Coming in and expressing myself. I don't have all the words to express that, but she's been definitely instrumental in my language, my visual language forming and being able to express. In her presence, my language, my body's intelligence just unraveled.
I think you speak for many of us. She has definitely touched many of our lives and our art practices, that's for sure, including my own. So yeah, thank you for that. I'm going to invite Lorna into the studio now. Lorna, how are you? And a very, very warm welcome. This is very exciting.
Thank you. And it's so exciting to be able to share this with you as well as Kuweni, and also, congratulations on your upcoming shows. And this is going to be a lovely time just sort of share our beginnings with each other.
Absolutely.
So, it was pretty special, really. And I don't know whether you can remember it as strong as what I can, but for me it was at the Richard Randell Art Centre at Mount Cootha in 2019, and you were only there for a short time, but it was a very powerful time for me to kind of look at the way you were working, but you were just like a sponge. You wanted to learn so much about mark making, and you were really intrigued by your how do I find my visual language. And from the time you started doing your Islamic section, which was in the mark making after you'd done your brushes, and because for me, I think making the brushes kind of unlocked a lot of that as well, and playing like a child again. And, and this part here was when I knew that, oh my gosh, this artist has got something really, really special happening in her life at the moment. And then all of a sudden you said to me, oh, I've got to go now. I've booked into a bookmaking class. And, and I thought, oh no. And then you secretly came over to me and said, I'm going to be doing your course at Fibres West in Perth, in Western Australia. And from then on, I just, oh my gosh, So I don't know, Debs, whether you've got that image there, or you just showed that one there, didn't you? So the way that you were doing your asemics, you were using both your hands, and you were just so confident in the way you wanted to express yourself. And then by the time you kind of left, and I thought, oh my gosh, I just wish that you'd been here a little bit longer. But it didn't really matter, because then when you then travelled to Perth, and we were working at the Moresque Institute there, and we were working in a very small room, and it was a big group, and we had to walk upstairs, but it was, you just embraced every single aspect of what we were doing, but you were also so. There was something special about you too, because you wanted to share the ways that you were working and wanting to tell your story even then about, you wanted to share your language, your heritage as well. And then when you started working on the pianola scroll with your handmade brushes, and you started to basically do your memory mapping of where you live now at Binnaburra, but then you also told to me about your story about your ancestral heritage as well, and I just thought, you're just this amazing artist that's just going to strive, and you have strived. You've just carried on, but it's also, your passion about what you do. It's your belief, your strong belief system, and the courage to step out of your comfort zone and just trust where you're going. And I'm just so proud of where you've landed. And and in Perth, you also wanted to become. You wanted to have me as one of your mentors, and I was very proud to say yes. And you've been a very, very yes, you are a fellow artist now. You're a friend, and now that I can see that you're a mentor to so many other people as well, and that's something I'm very proud of. So yeah, and I can't wait to come up to see you at your opening later on in the year. So I wish you the best of luck, and have a great chat now with Debs as well.
Lawrence, before I let you go, and I'll let you comment, Kuweni, because I'm sure you'd love to. Those are really.
Lorna. When I first met you, being someone, a person of colour and from a diasporic background, I felt completely safe to be myself in your presence. And I felt completely safe for my body. This is not coming from the mind. My body felt so safe to respond to my own language. I mean, the kind of language you open my body to is not the language that has words. It's a different visual language. So my body felt completely at home. And also I think I had that complete respect for you and reverence for your practice, because your language was another story that I was longing. Like when I saw this language, it was like calling me into your workshop or to work with you. And that was the beginning of beginnings. And had I not had that very gentle way of, and also that deep acceptance of who I was, I don't think that could have happened. That language wouldn't have surfaced, and nothing of this sort would have happened. So I'm really, really grateful for that opportunity. Thank you.
Well, you've just become the most beautiful teacher as well, and it's just I just think for me now at my turning point in my age as well, it's just something that that to me, I think creativity is very courageous, and it's also very powerful to share what you've been able to create in your work. So yeah, I'm very proud.
Thank you, Lawrence. Lawrence, thank you for joining us. That was very, very special. I know I speak for so many students who have done Perfectly Imperfect, that you've touched so many of us and helped so many of us unlock that visual language. So
it's something that I'm proud of. I think it's really good to be proud of what you do as well. So, it's, and I can feel that in your work as well too, both you and Deb. So, you've got to be proud in what you do and be passionate about it. So, yeah, congratulations.
Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, then. See you
Bye
guys.
now.
Bye.
Bye now. Oh, that was lovely.
That was
yeah. Kuweni, as we move on and talk about your phases and your journey, one of the first questions that I really wanted to ask you was, in your practice, how does your visual language bridge your cultural heritage and your current identity? How do you see it evolving as a tool for both personal expression and connection with your audience?
I think, like I said, so I have my visual language, but I tend to root that with my heritage, so my yantra drawing. So last year in 2023, I sat with ritualists and learned how to do ritual drawings, and that was a part of. So my language has actually matured over the years, and I have let it become. It's evolving as we speak. And it's also my journey. It reflects my own personal journey, uncovering or shredding different layers as I go. So they tend to mirror each other.
Yeah, interesting. You mentioned in some of your notes that a pivotal moment during the Where To Next workshop with Dr. Catherine Lloyd was when you realized you were really ready to embrace your role as a professional artist, because initially you were not, correct? You were in a corporate world. Oh,
totally. Yes. So I was a life insurance underwriter for over 15 years. I've been in the insurance industry for over 20 years. It was very much a left brain job where I would assess insurance applications, about 15 of them a day. But I was also turning 40. So around that time, I think I was 37 or 38 when I attended workshops, particularly a workshop with Dr. Catherine Lloyd, where she took me through this process of working out, what was important. I think you had and all about relationships and marking our career and our journeys, and that kind of crystallized where to next was the big question. As an underwriter, you also want to hedge your risk staging. And in this kind of risk, there was no hedging, it was a gut feeling, It was a very strong instinct that I had to jump in. It was a call. And the circumstances such, I was in this very uncomfortable working situation as well. So it was just complete faith, and I also had really good, amazing mentors around me. So I would call them scaffolding. You have to have really good scaffolding, good people who believe in who you are, your potential, people who can see your future. And they can, they don't tell you what to do, but they ask some very powerful questions.
Yeah, that make you seek inwardly. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Kuweni, I'd love to talk about your cultural facilitation. I feel, and I have some images that you've shared with us. Can we talk to that point while I show some images?
Sure. So in 2021, I went to being a full-time artist. And one of the things I took up was to work with a company called NGO called Australia Remade. They hired me to hold a public forum. And I requested that I would hold it for just women of color. And we held it for over 3 months, and it was all through creative expression, where the women got to, so through symbolic drawing, so very much not ritual drawing, but it was symbolic drawing where they just drew images of what we were talking, and we would unpack what those images meant to them. So there were themes of they wanted to really belong and matter in Australia, and then we uncovered what sort of, these are some of the themes that generally have no language to express. And we wanted to kind of capture what was that feeling that they were drawing, and drawing it all out. But we had a framework that we followed. But it was, the whole vision was that we wanted to, the education was the thing. We want to educate the general public about what it was to live like a diasporic, migrant in Australia, and how do we respectfully live, like hold a culture within a culture, and how do we also educate ourselves to walk this different way of, living respectfully, of a culture within a culture. And also healing, and also when, how do we become responsible for the place and the people? So that was kind of the facilitation work there. I think one of the other images you just showed, that's cultural facilitation work I'm doing with Indigenous women's group in Sri Lanka in my village. Not this one, but the other image you showed. So I'm working with these marginalized women, the Indigenous women in my village in Bibila, Sri Lanka. We're working out how I can extend my practice, where they could possibly create a merchandise with an arts experience, like a tourist experience, and how that product can be sold in Australia. So it's a working in progress at the moment. And a research paper was written about that work and presented in Edinburgh just last month.
Really, really important and powerful work, Kuweni, and obviously very, very important to you. You speak of phases, and your first phase being Pigments of Place, and you did a Running Rivers exhibition. Kuweni, could we talk about that? How do you, I guess while I show some of the work, you can talk to the work, but I wanted to ask you how you navigate the intersection of your Sri Lankan heritage and your Australian experiences in your work. I think that's a really important, yeah.
Sure, I'll just start from the beginning. So Running Rivers started in 2020, where I went and did some community research. And it explores the themes of belonging, migration, migrant identity, and also regeneration. So it's very much how from the research was about what my role was. So it was very much connecting people and place.
Yes.
So I then, Running Rivers, Pigments of Place came to being. I have a very deep relationship and respect with the Indigenous elders here on this mountain. It's the Wanjerabara elders and Malanjali elders. So they, we did rituals and ceremonies, and they showed me how to walk country and respond to country. And we had, so the inquiry was very much through ritual and ceremonies. So it was that was the creative inquiry, and then there was the response through work.
And I'm assuming that these works are in response to that experience that I'll show these images of.
Absolutely. So the pigments came from place, and the tools that I used to express this work also came from place. Yeah, that's this is like lily pilly. This ink is made from lichen, the pink, the bright pink. The previous one was lily pillies.
So all the colors in that work are from place.
So pretty much no. So the pink on this one is from place.
Yes.
But the little strokes of movement, that is pastels.
Okay. And this beautiful work, this is so powerful, this piece.
So the country I live here is called Wanjerabara, meaning place of the it's the people of the what do they call the Wallaby people. So that's so that kind of became very like a feature image of that exhibition. And this is again earth pigments and lily pigments.
And Kuweni, for those who are watching on a screen, how big are these pieces? I'd be interested to know that.
They're about 120 by 80. If it's a portrait, and if it was landscape, same way, but the diameters change here.
Beautiful.
And this is a native mulberry. that's worked into a pigment, which is a beautiful green that goes brown when you use iron mixed into it. So you can see some of the green.
Kuweni, tell us more about the tools that you gather when you're in your place, because you use the environment around you to make your marks, which is quite beautiful.
Totally. So when I'm walking, I'm very, very aware of what sort of tools could make a very interesting mark. So anything I would pick up. I mean, looking at leaves, looking at any grasses, sticks, anything that's got a very, very interesting mark-making ability, I would explore that then. And pigments, of course, anything that's got a pigment potential. So my pigments are earth pigments, which are collected from the riverbeds, or plant pigments, pretty much any from plants. There could be roots, it could be berries, or it could be the bark as well, or the roots. Yeah.
Kuweni, I've got your Vimeo that you sent to me here, which is Running Rivers Pigments of Place. I thought I could play it, and instead of having the sound on, you could speak to the video. Would that be okay? Yeah, okay. Fine. I'll add it to the stage.
Or anything that's very...
And then... this is very much... Yeah, I could talk about, this is Running River. This is the creek that's closest to me. It's called the Back Creek. That's the English name. I'm sure there was an indigenous name before that, which we've lost. This creek runs across, the watershed is in Binnaburra, which is the forest back of my place, back of Beachmont. That's where the creek emerges, and then it falls, it goes across Beachmont, and then it falls 6 times as 6 big waterfalls. So we know this, even though it's a small creek, I mean, fairly small, it has been running for thousands of years. And it's a very ancient place. So I've been in some of the waterholes. I've collected pigments from around this place and walked this river. It's like my belonging story of, as a person who's not from Australia, I've learned and become a creature of place through the walking. In my culture, we pilgrim, in temples. That is the concept I worked on. So I was pilgriming place to belong and become a creature of place. And what helped me was the pigments and the tools that came from place.
And Kuweni, in the narrative of the video, and I'll put the link up for everybody because you narrating the story is quite beautiful. You mentioned how symbolic rivers were to you, and in Sri Lanka you would go with your family, and the conversations you had in rivers were different conversations. I thought that was so beautiful. Can you talk to that?
Sure. The relationship we have with the rivers are very, very different to what people here have, the relationship. So I've been to the rivers with leaves to put them to soak so that they could be taken back and we can weave with them the next day. My grandparents owned a working elephant. So I would go and we would watch the elephant. The elephant would bathe there and have his time in the river. I've been to the river with my siblings and my mother and my aunts, where we go to just chat and, have these very deep conversations. But those conversations were the kind of conversations you don't have between closed doors or within walls. They were very fluid conversations that stayed in the river. And with those people who came to the river. So, they're really, the kind of relationship I have with the river is, I guess, a memory. And it's also like an entity or a deity that I go to, like a temple.
Beautiful, beautiful. I've paused the video because in this clip now, dance and movement is so important to you, and of course we'll speak about this a little bit later, that you're actually doing a solo performance. So I thought you could just talk to us a bit more about dance and movement and how important it is to you as an artist.
Sure. So as back then in 2022, more 2021, as I was preparing to go to the river, I worked with some mentors one being Indigenous artist Libby Harvard, another being a Sri Lankan artist Anup Vega, who's a ritual artist as well, and also an Indian Australian ritual dance teacher called Padma Menon. So she taught me her dance tradition of Kuchipudi, which comes from India, but it's very similar. The deities that she taught me how to dance, and the kind of it was very almost like a shamanic journey. I journeyed with her for I think 6 or 9 months. I can't remember, maybe 6, possibly even 9, where I journeyed over like these different. There was a creative inquiry through movement. And that opened different faculties on different kind of expressions, and also your strong intuition or that instinct, very, very strong.
Wonderful, wonderful. I might pause that video for now, if that's okay with you, Kuweni. I did have a question. The significance of the word phase to you, is it because your journey is cyclical, or is it because you're finding as an artist you're evolving?
All of the above. So my work is not linear, it's cyclical, like you just said. It's also evolving. So I touch the same spaces, but I go deeper. So the pigments of place didn't finish. It's still continuing, but it's these different layers that keep building on.
I can keep playing it if you want. There we go. Do you want me to put the sound on?
If you want to, but I'll stay quiet if you're putting the sound on. Yeah.
Flows, there's the playfulness, there's presence. It only wants to reach the depth. So I allowed myself to flow and walk away from those mind-led paradigms. So I let place really inform the work. It was really, the work had its own rhythm that I just, through my body, allowed. The value that I add is deep listening. And that's my purpose, is really helping people belong and matter. But this idea of belonging and matter, and what is my calling? My calling is really to be that space holder for intercultural exchange, where I'm like a conductor who holds space for even the quietest of sounds to be heard. So I feel like that's my calling, and that calling very much had to be in line with the calling of the place. And this journey has been about that belonging. I think is belonging. Belonging. So we're always longing. For me, it's that river always wanting to go and meet the sea. And for me, that's like longing to meet myself, my most innate self. That's the purest, the most innocent self. The medicine of the river was that persistence and patience, and really meeting myself at the depth of myself.
Beautiful. Really beautiful.
Thank you.
I'm glad that we got to hear that segment because it's so powerful. Yeah. Kuweni, I'd love to move on and show some more of your work for a second. I'll just, the next section of our discussion was going to be the Pilgrims of Place, which if you can talk to us a little bit about what that was and the importance of your Sri Lankan mentor, Anup Vega, and how he influenced.
Talk about that. Can I just finish off something I want to mention about Pigments?
Absolutely.
So walking with the elders and walking country, responding to country, I really found who I was. So if I really belong in, I found my pulse, my rhythm, my time and space again, and I fully belong within my body. I would say like a decolonized body. So that was really important so it was a journey of remembering who I really was. And that led me to knowing my roots. So I think in those conversations with my elders, I remember one of the aunties, Auntie Ruby Sims, saying, this is definitely, you come home to your body, but you should go back home and learn your own roots. And that was such an important thing. Mm-hmm. So in 2023, just last year, I spent 8 months in Sri Lanka, where I worked with ritualists, and I went back to my village. It's a very rural village called Bibila. I had not lived in this village for such a long time. I mean, I've been in Australia for 25 years. Even when I lived in Sri Lanka, I was schooling in Colombo. So therefore, my time was, school holidays, we would come and spend in the village. And it was on and off for a long time. So that longing was there, that longing I talk about in their video. So I went back and I wanted to spend that quality time really going deeper into my traditions, my own traditions of symbolic drawing, yantra drawing. So I sat and learned from Indigenous elders and also sat with ritualists in my village and learned the form of ritual drawing. Also got to spend considerable amount of time with Anup Vega, who had mentored me before that online, because this was through COVID. So we've done all these sessions on Zoom, but then, with these old traditions, they're not just given. They don't want, it's not done over the phone or on Zoom. Anup did it, in a very limited way, but there are in these traditions, these very old traditions, there are ways of, so they have to gain trust, and you have to be ready, and your teacher has to be in your presence. And these are oral traditions, so you have to read a lot of text in language and recite. So yantra meaning symbolic drawing. Mantra is the word that actually activates the drawing. And tantra is how you live it after that. So it's a whole new way of living. So in a tangible way, I got to sit with them, learn these oral traditions, and apply them back to my art, and kind of be in this presence of these teachers, and also within temple spaces. And then the pigments, I went with the Indigenous elders into the forest, and they taught me how to sustainably harvest pigments and make pigments. They know their pigments. And that was a beautiful way of learning. That was the plant pigments. Earth pigments I processed from my own knowing from the river. And then the works were exhibited at the Barefoot Gallery. And Anup and I, this was a collaboration. So he was one of the feature artists.
Kuweni, I want to ask you for a moment. When you first went home after all that time of being away, how did you feel when you first got to your home village?
I felt I didn't belong again. Because it was because of that. I think I've lived in Australia for so long, and I was no longer just Sri Lankan. I was Australian. I had then walked with these elders, and there was a lens that they had now given me, I have already inbuilt or within my psyche and my body and myself. So, when I was walking country there, I was still, it's not like I could forget because I still practice these ways of walking and responding. And then I felt, I'm not here, I'm not there. And then when I sat with my Indigenous elders and ritualists and slowly unlearned, and, it was difficult. There was a struggle. In life, there is always an activating force, I believe, and a restraining force. So, of course, the restraining force was active. They didn't understand me. I didn't understand them. It was, they are very slow-paced, and they have, sometimes they would want to meet you. Sometimes they would say they'll meet you, but then they don't want to meet you. There's something else that's happened. So there was this slowness and a lot of patience and persistence, which came in a practical way I had to be. And in that, I reclaimed my roots again. I reclaimed, and there's a recalibration that happened. So within this Australian, Sri Lankan hybridity kind of birth in that struggle.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, that's incredible. Your work is, I'll actually show some of the images from Pilgrims of Place, if that's okay, and we can talk to some of these works.
Yeah. So when in Australia, the Indigenous elders taught me they dream the land and how to dream the land, and then listen to the land and visit the deep space of deep listening. deep thinking and also deep learning. And that's how we walked and responded with the land. But in Sri Lanka, what I learned was it's dreaming the deities. So there are these deities that are place-based deities. And the longing and the belonging is through the connection with the land, is through harvest rituals. So it's how they deal with the land, is how you kind of work with the land, and how do you. So the word culture itself, in Sinhala, the word is Sanskrita, which directly translates to Sisa Aswadana Lada, meaning that which we have sown and harvested. So so for us, culture in Sri Lanka means that which we have sown and harvested. So they are very intertwined, the rituals and the cultural aspects of these harvest rituals. So I learned those things, and then it was this other layer of dreaming the land, and over that dreaming the deities.
Kuweni, I'm interested in these works in particular, the symbolism.
So there's a temple that's very close to home. It's a very ancient feminine goddess temple. This goddess temple, these temples don't have statues. The symbolism, so the reverence is towards her jewelry. And there are stories about her and her appearances and how she took care of the people. And these works very much are from those. And also there are certain symbolic drawings that I have drawn in black.
That's what I was referring to.
Yeah,
specifically,
so those are specifically ritual drawings done for, particularly this one is postnatal stress disorder.
Yes.
So when feminine, and that's the yantra drawing you would do, especially for a woman who's got PTSD.
And there's the symbolism in this one.
This is a deity. This is a doorway deity. So our goddess temples had a male, masculine, as a doorway, like a doorkeeper, and and for me, this is the doorway deity of that particular temple.
That's beautiful.
And so it continues. So there's stories. Then she's got a son, and the son. So this deity is actually my clan deity. Our family's deity is this particular deity, and stories of the peacock, and this particular deity. This is a yantra drawing of this deity.
Right.
And another expression of the same deity, but in a different way. Different ritual drawings are for different things. Some rituals are drawings to activate certain aspects of your life. So it could be prosperity. If you're going to war, there are certain aspects. War could be many things to many people. It could be like you're in a very stressful situation, like your whole body's at war, and you have to combat these feelings. And it's like you're going. So it's different things have different. There's rituals that have to go with this drawing. So drawing is the first step, then the ritual and activation with your voice of mantra, and then the people who are wearing and the ritualists have to know how to live it after that, so that this becomes a reality.
Kuweni, your work is very much a response to who you are, your culture, your heritage, and your place. So what message or feelings are you hoping to leave people or audiences when they're actually looking at your work? Are you trying? I'd love you to answer that question.
I guess be open and ask questions and be curious. I think personally as an artist, I think that's what really got me really activated, and I think I always had my own, like my inner voice. I listened to my inner voice, but I listened. I was curious. What if I took that path? What if I did this? What if? And I always ask the what if questions a lot. And I think if if you're an observer looking at the artwork, I think be curious about why, what is this, and ask questions, and try to put your own narrative around the artwork as well, because they may mean many things to you, who's the viewer.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Kuweni, people of place, which you refer to as phase 3, and we have some really beautiful photographs of you doing some, well, they're exquisite. Can I show those while you talk to the ritual installation that these are?
So coming back from Sri Lanka and, you know, living and breathing in temples and working with ritualists, I saw them as performers. I saw how it's a performance. They do a performance. And I was so inspired to be the performer. So I wanted to create this ritual, like a ritual installation with my artwork, and then invite people to come and interact with the artworks by immersing in a journey. So I'm creating a labyrinth with artworks, and then having like a temple ritual installation where I invite people to take the walk and be immersive in the work, and then we'll have an opening ceremony and a closing ceremony. At the closing ceremony, I will activate the space as a ritualist, and it will be a performance.
It's wonderful. And will people have the opportunity to come and immerse with you during the performance?
Absolutely. So the exhibition is going to be at Outer Space at the Judith Wright Centre in the Valley. It's opening on the 20th of September with the opening ceremony. And it's closing on the 26th of October with the closing ceremony, and that's when I will be performing.
Oh, wonderful. And I'm assuming that you'll be using your handmade tools as well as your own pigment inks, and everything will be handmade, so true to place.
Definitely. So it's very much inspired by Mewa. Mewa is the Brisbane River. That the indigenous name is Mewa. This work is very much about the hybridity that's emerging within my psyche, of holding my culture within this culture, and how the rivers become the deity for me in Australia, and how and her message, and that coming together of that temple culture and walking of the land and the river into this one artwork that people can immerse in. But it's also the broader, wider message of how do we actually, all of us, hold a culture within a culture respectfully.
And reconcile that.
Yes, because we're going to have differences. But we are going to have shared values, but how do we reconcile the differences and celebrate the shared values and shared even spirituality?
I think you said embrace our hybrid identities and foster a sense of transcultural flow. Beautiful. Really beautiful words. Yeah. Kuweni, let's have a chat about reverberations, which of course is on, and I'll put a link up for the, it's at BMAC in Outer Brisbane.
Yes. So reverberations is coming from my autobiographical, so it's a performance, my first solo performance. I'm going to have an autobiographical film where I will be showing my story in a 10-minute film, and then the performance is about 50 minutes. It's an autobiographical performance of my story of belonging in Australia. And the third element is a participatory arts experience where we will be inviting the audience to participate and create ephemeral artwork while we unpack what it means to belong.
Oh, okay. And how do you mentally and creatively prepare for a solo performance? Is the performance a response to your artwork or that moment in time, or is it intuitive, or have you actually, do you plan? I'd love to know, do you mentally and creatively prepare for a solo performance, Kuweni?
So the preparation is very much with the tools and the pigments, but the artwork itself is intuitive. It happens at the time. So it's very much whatever. So I'm responding to the musicians and also the vocalists, and they're responding to me.
Beautiful. Wow. And Kuweni, are you currently experimenting with any new materials or techniques for your work?
Yes, I'm actually using river mud on the panels. So that's nothing new. I've been doing that. But this time I'm also using cochineal and lac. So I'm using cochineal because it's like the blood. For me, it's very much that feminine essence in it. So it's the first time I'm actually working with cochineal and madder root.
Beautiful. Those beautiful red colors. Yeah. And how do you envisage your art evolving over the next few years? Are there new, because it's such a way of life for you? Are there new avenues you want to explore, or you currently
I want to go into visual projection. So that's, I forgot to say before, that's a very new territory that I'm going to have some projections on the walls and also on some of the fabric of my work. So I love the idea how my work is very place-based, and it's very much like my body is activated by making the pigments, and my body is activated by making the tools, and the work is really a response to that place and the moment. But I also like the fact that digital art is also the opposite of that. It's not that.
Interesting.
So I want to kind of play around in those spaces where it's not from place as such, but it's also from this other very inner place of your body. So and how do the two play with each other as well.
Wow, I'm interested to see how that journey goes. Really am. That'll be very exciting. Kuweni, looking forward, you mentioned that you are doing the Gold Coast Triennial and you're putting in a piece called Mudcloth. Please tell us more about that.
Yeah, I think you shared one of the images there. So that's one of them would be going to the Gold Coast Triennial. And it is Mudcloth is mud from the Back Creek that was processed into a pigment. So it was a few pigments. One was the grey color, one was ochre, and then the red earth. And it was a self-portrait. So
beautiful. Is that the image that I showed? That one?
No, we can't show the image until the opening.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. We'll all follow you. Make sure everybody's following you on Instagram, and we'll make sure that we get to see that. Hold that thought. Kuweni, I must then ask you, what lessons have you learned from previous exhibitions that you're potentially bringing into your future work?
I think stay true to yourself and your style. We all have a very innate style that's given, that can only come through our bodies. So there's no need to, for me anyway, I get inspiration from other artists and from mentors, but I don't necessarily copy or try to I do get inspired, like different colors and the different shapes and different. But I find that we all have our own style, which comes if you are courageous enough to let it come through. It's very scary though. It's very, very scary. But if you just if you stay with that fear and let your body express, you could see how that language just becomes very, very, it's like, and you can see your own language.
It would it's very empowering. And then looking forward, you mentioned that Roots We Take in Colombo is a group exhibition.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. So I was selected as one of the contemporary artists because of my regenerative thinking patterns. So it's been held by the UNIC, so that's the European Union Institutes of Culture, have got together and they're hosting 10 artists to show their work. So I'm a Sri Lankan-Australian artist showing my work. So I will be creating work this week, towards the end of this week, near Galloway, which is near my home in my rural village. 7 feet by 15 feet, the largest work I've ever created, and a sound installation, and that will be exhibited the following weekend, 31st of August and 1st of September.
Oh, I look forward to seeing images of that. Wow, that's incredible.
Thank you.
Kuweni, before we've been going almost an hour, and I wanted to ask you, for those out there that are displaced or diasporic people that are struggling with their visual language, what advice would you give to those artists?
I would say reach out to your First Nations elders. Every one of us in every country will have a First Nations elder or even a neighboring country. When I say country, First Nations countries. Reach out, have a conversation. Don't be exploitive and extractive. Build a relationship. It's relational. And be patient. Until it's time and ready for them to share with you what's important, but very deeply listen and find your own belonging through the First Nations lens, because I think it's so important for the future of this country that we all know who's First Nations first, and then we belong with our cultures. I think we still have to hold on to our cultures very strongly, but how do we hold that strength? For us to hold our culture so strongly, if we have First Nations, we feel held. So that's how I feel. I feel my culture is held. I'm not pressing it against something. I'm being held by this beautiful culture that existed for thousands of years. So has my culture, has existed for thousands of years in another land. They've invited me in here, and they're holding it with me, which is such a bit. Then there's that hybridity, and the cultural lines become very blurred, and something other happens. And if you let that happen, it's just such a beautiful space to be and living in.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you. Before we wrap up, I'd love to do a little bit of something light and fun, Kuweni. So this is a quick, spontaneous answers, or like a pop quiz. I'm going to throw out a few phases to you, not at you, to you. And I'd love to hear the first thing that comes to mind, and let's just see where your creativity takes us.
Okay.
Are you ready? Okay. So my first one is, every artist must own
a brush.
A handmade brush.
Definitely. Yeah, a handmade brush.
Every artist must believe
in their true self, their own voice.
Beautiful. Every artist must accept
everything. The whole non-duality. So beyond the black and white, good and bad, right and wrong, everything.
Love that. Every artist must appreciate
yourself.
Love that. Yes. And then every artist must avoid
self-critiquing. Hard.
Oh, that's lovely, Kuweni. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Honestly, your insights into your journey as an artist and the depth of your practice has, for me, been enlightening, Kuweni. Thank you.